Some of the best phone app games are those that can be played for long periods of time or just a turn or two while waiting in line. Everflight has the ability to hook the player for a quick game or keep them playing for hours. Everflight is a 2D side-scrolling game that uses touchscreen controls to aim and propel an arrow through the sky. The object of the game is for the player to shoot their arrow as far as they can to earn points and coins that can be later used for various upgrades. The challenges for the player is aiming strategically and using various power-ups built in the game to keep their arrow in flight for as long as possible. Each level increases in difficulty as hazards are introduced that impact the player's arrow while it is in flight. There are built-in obstacles such as clouds, rain, birds, and depending on how high you are, even airplanes. These obstacles have the ability to decrease the arrow's speed, weigh the arrow down, or even knock it out of the sky. The player may dodge these obstacles while in flight by using two things: rockets and weights. Rockets propel the player upwards and forwards, but the player has a limited amount of them, and weights allow the player to sink down in the air but have an unlimited amount of use. The player can opt to upgrade their weight amounts in 1, 5, or 10-pound weights by purchasing them in the shop. The key of the game is to utilize both of these items to not only dodge the obstacles, but to also complete the levels. Strategic players may also utilize these items to collect various things throughout the sky. Points, coins, and extra rockets may be obtained in addition to the initial amount given to the player at the start of the game. This adds another element to the rocket and weight system by making it so that the player has to think on the fly about whether or not they want to attempt to attain these items during flight or deplete their inventory by using them at all. Each player starts the game with 5 rockets that can only be replenished by earning them in the game or purchasing them in the shop, adding an additional level of strategy. If the player's arrow were to crash land at any point or get knocked out of the sky by a hazard, the player would lose a life and have to retry the level. There are 5 lives that the player starts with, and more can be found throughout the sky or purchased through the in-game shop. Once the player loses all of their lives, it is game over. At various points throughout each level, there are checkpoints. Checkpoints are found after the player flies a certain distance. If the player were to fly past a checkpoint, any amount of distance after that point is converted into coins, which the player can use at the in-game shop. Once the player passes a checkpoint and finally crash lands, the player will begin again at that checkpoint. At the new checkpoint, the player will fire off once again as if it were a new level. Once the player passes through all the checkpoints and reaches the bullseye at the end of each world, the level ends, the player receives everything they obtained throughout the world, and the player is sent to the shop. At the shop, the player can use their in-game coins to purchase various upgrades and items, such as a crossbow, which propels the arrow with greater force, additional lives, stronger weights, and additional rockets. This is also where the player may save their game and continue from. Everflight is most similar to the Angry Birds games. However, this game idea is more about the strategy of maneuvering your arrow in flight rather than projecting it to create damage. Unlike Angry Birds, Everflight offers the ability for the player to remain immersed in gameplay after the release of the arrow by using the weight system to control the arrow in flight. This keeps the player involved in the gameplay from start to finish and adds an additional strategic element that Angry Birds cannot offer. I believe that this game would be rather simple to make with a team of Full Sail students. However, the ideas described are more touchscreen based, and we have not yet learned how to implement touchscreen controls in our classes. Nevertheless, it could be easily converted into keyboard and mouse controls. Another design risk would be the fact that we only have experience making 3D games with Unity. I believe that converting this idea into 3D would be technically doable. However, keeping it 2D would be ideal, as I believe the physics and mechanics required are better suited for a 2D game rather than 3D. Thank you for watching.